I'm curious, what's the experience like for you as you're getting these, I guess, downloads or whatever you want to call it, whether you're with a client or whether with yourself? Because I'm sure you experience this, like, because you're very tapped in. What does it feel like to be you? How are you getting these messages?
I seriously really want to get coffee with you
I know.
sometime. These
I feel
questions.
like this conversation could last 5 hours 'cause I have so many questions for you.
Your curiosity is so activating. Like, curiosity is such a gift that we give in this life. And I feel like you're asking questions that people genuinely want to know and usually are like too maybe like proud to ask, where they're like, I know what it's like to be intuitive. I'm super intuitive. And like you are super intuitive. You are. You have
Oh,
your
okay.
own really potent gift of intuition. Like I consume your content. You're a channel. Like, it's clear, you are a channel.
I think I am in a way, but I'm not a psychic the way that you are. So I'm just curious.
Well, that's very humble of you. And I would argue, but I really think this is a potent question, and also a question that makes me feel really seen. Because sometimes as a psychic, you kind of feel like a magic 8 ball. It just gets like shaken, like it's like, tell me.
They don't know how it works.
Yes. And I could talk about so many things, like changing my price point over my career has changed the type of client, the type of session, the type of experience that I have. When I was charging, $50 a session, I was getting questions like, how can I voodoo this guy into loving me? And I was like, ooh, we respect free will, actually. And we believe in autonomy and like free will and agency.
Yeah.
So it's changed a lot over the years. But what's it like to be me? I will be honest, it's really lovely. It's really lovely. And I think it's important to talk about that because people often want to say that like they're really afraid to activate their gifts or step into their own ability because they have this perception that it's like scary or bad, or you're going to see something, or you're going to like accidentally open a portal to hell or like whatever, which by the way, I don't believe in. I don't believe there's a hell. Never heard from it. Never had a demon roll up in my DMs. So I'm feeling pretty confident that like it's all good energy if anyone's curious. But I think it's important to say it's not something to be afraid of. And in my own personal experience of intuition, like in my life, I have a lot of long-term vision where I see myself doing things and like I know it's going to happen. The night I met my husband, I was like, oh shit, I'm going to marry you. And luckily I like had the forethought to keep that in my mouth, like in my own self.
Of course.
Because he would have for sure been freaked out. But the moment I saw him, I was like, there you are.
Wow.
It was almost like, where you been, loca? Like, it was literally like, where have you been? I've been looking for you. But sometimes it's like really small, minute things where for me, I just tend to see things like 2 or 3 minutes into the future. And it's always really funny because like this is such a random thing, but we had a professional organizer come and organize our house, and she loved our house so much. She asked if she could do a photo shoot here. So I said, of course, no problem. And so I stayed on to like, help manage or, give people access or permission or whatever, just be a host. And probably like every minute I was hearing spirit say like, oh, you're going to need to move that. You're going to need to do that. They're going to need this. They're going to need that. But I didn't want to, it wasn't my photo shoot, right? Like when I'm on set and I'm creative directing, that's its own thing. But this was someone else's business, like I didn't hire this photographer. I don't run this business. So I just sat back and every single thing that I foresaw happened right in front of my eyes. So I think it's funny that like, I think people expect intuition to be this big booming voice that's like, you're meant to be a psychic or like whatever. Like it's like it, booms into your ears and changes your life. And sometimes it's like, oh, she's going to fall in 5 seconds. Like that's going to be in like,
It's just like a inner knowing. It's quiet.
little things. Like one of my favorite stories is I took my friend apartment hunting after she had a breakup, and I didn't want her to go alone because like stranger danger, and we're in this place, and this guy's like, it's brand new oven, brand new refrigerator. This place is so nice. And I looked at my friend and I said, you're going to rent this place. I know this is the place you're going to choose, but that stove is going to catch on fire. So I just need you to like be aware of that.
Wow.
And the guy was like, hey, I just installed that stove. Like, what are you talking about? He was really offended. Sure enough, 5 months later after she moved in, caught on fire.
Wow.
Everything was fine. Everything was, because she was prepared because I told her. And she called me that day and was like, in case I ever doubted you, like, I shouldn't, But also it comes with a lot of responsibility because I know things ahead of time. And I used to feel really responsible for helping people avoid difficult things. And turns out that was just some control issues, actually. So like worked on that in therapy. But it was something I had to really overcome because I felt like if I can do this, I should do this. If I can protect someone I love, I should protect someone I love. But what that actually does is it removes their ability and their autonomy in having their own human experience, making their own choices, making their own mistakes, having a human experience. And I also really found too that like it was one of the ways that I was earning validation and love was like, being this like basically like on call,
Yeah, the helper.
resource to
Yeah,
people.
yep.
And so I really had to like question my own motivations and also my own like wellness. Is this really is this right for me? Does it really honor me? And the answer was no. And so now I again am really focused on consent. And so unless a friend asks me, I'm not going to say anything. And sometimes if a friend does ask me, I'm still like, let's just let this play out. Let's just let this roll out because I don't think this is something I will say with my husband. I really can't keep it to myself. I'm always like, I met someone at a party and I was like, oh, you're going to work with my husband. I need to introduce you. You're going to work together. And
Uh-huh.
both of them were like, no. Sure enough, who works for my husband now? This lovely man.
Yeah, you have to let it play out sometimes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about intuition because I want to give listeners like a something I don't know, some knowledge or something practical to help them tap into their own power of intuition. What tips do
Yes.
you have for people? How can we start to, you know, cultivate intuition and also be able to tell intuition from like other things like our fear or our thoughts or emotions because it can be so confusing. I'm not even sure what I'm feeling.
Yes. So that's such a good question. So I like to talk about the four primary psychic senses, which are clairvoyance or clear psychic sight, clairaudience, clear psychic hearing, claircognizance, clear psychic knowing, and clairsentience or clairempathy, so clear psychic feeling. And these are really important to understand because this is your intuitive language and you're born with all four of these abilities. But in life, when we are unconscious of those abilities, we either shut them off or turn them out, or people in our lives convince us that we're imagining things. Or, I mean, how many little kids, right, say, oh, I see this, or I talked to this person and it's like, that's not true. That's not real, whatever. And we get so desensitized to our own abilities and gifts. So by first really being willing to believe that you have intuitive abilities, even if they're dormant, I always kind of like equate it to like your abs. Do I have a six pack? No. Do I have the ability to develop a six pack if I actually go and work out and exercise? 100%. My ab muscles exist. They are there. But to say that I don't have abs just because I don't have a six pack is not correct. And so with your intuitive and psychic abilities, it's a matter of exercising. They are muscles. And we are naturally habituated to utilizing and training our physical senses. And we also have these like sort of physical instincts that, we hear things, we see things, we perceive things. We're physically made to be alert biologically, but we're not necessarily taught, or it's not really reinforced for us, that we also have these invisible senses that are just as important, but we don't know. We're never taught how to use them, how to activate them. It's not like when you go to the eye doctor and they check your eyes, like you don't go to the clairvoyance doctor and they check your third eye.
Imagine you could be that doctor.
I am that doctor. It's such a gift to be able to learn your intuitive language so that you can understand how spirit speaks to you. So that's the first thing I would say. And I actually have a quiz on my website that you can go and take, and it will help you understand what your primary intuitive sense is. But it's important to recognize and know that you have them all. They are all within you. It's a matter of practicing. And there are so many little games that you can play. And we even see this in like positive psychology or mind hacking. I'm like really into neuroplasticity and all those things. The mentorship is actually built around principles of mind hacking and positive psychology, as well as as well as spiritual principles, because I think we're physical, cerebral beings and we want to live in both worlds, and we should. So by playing these games, we actually find that human beings learn things 400 times faster when we engage in play. So being able to see these opportunities not as like chances to get it right and prove yourself and like figure out that you have these amazing gifts. It's about practice. So the little games I would say are, before you pick up the phone and check who's calling, see if you can intuit who it is. Before you open a bill that's come, see if you can intuit the amount. I like to play little games all the time with my husband where I'll say, okay, think of a number between 1 and 100, and I'll try and intuit that number. And it's not about being right. It's about being active. It's about practicing. It's about playing. And it's so important for our growth mindset to not feel like we have to get it right the first time, or otherwise we're not psychic. And I think that's the mistake that people make often, is like, if right away you're not correct, which is like a word I don't even like to use, then you feel like, oh, I don't even know why I tried. And it's like this embarrassment, this shame that kind of washes over us, and we turn away from it. And that would be like if you walked into the gym and you couldn't immediately bench press 200 pounds. It's like, well, if you just continue to work on it, you will be able to do so. I mean, I don't know that I could personally, but as we practice makes progress. And that's really, really important. Another thing that I think is super, super, super imperative in building a sense of intuition or a relationship with the divine is having a daily dialogue, which is actually why I created my Oracle decks, because my clients and people in my life really like the way that I articulate things. And so I was like, oh, I can be in your pocket. I'll just make an Oracle deck. So I partnered with the universe and channeled the messages. And I think that whether it's mine or someone else's, it's really important to find a deck that resonates with you, one that you're excited to pick up, one that you feel inspired by, one that feels like visually stimulating, one that you resonate with the language of, so that you feel drawn to use it, so that you feel like it's your partner in your process, because it is. And every single day, I would guide you, if you're trying to grow your intuition, to ask Spirit, what would you have me know today? And to just pull a card. You don't have to stress about it. Your question has an inherent vibrational match in its answer. You cannot pull the wrong card. Even if you don't understand the message right away, even if you don't think it's for you, even if it doesn't make sense right there in that moment, trust that there is no mistake. Your question and the answer are a vibrational match. You cannot pull the wrong card. And then what I would encourage you to do is do a little bit of metacognitive writing, or what they call angel writing, where you've pulled that card, and before you go to your booklet or before you read what, the message is that's been assigned, what do you perceive? What do you receive? And it's this practice of ask and answer, ask and answer. And eventually that process takes itself outside of the tools and the tangible sort of activity of writing. And it's just sort of this more automatic, what do you want me to know? Oh, okay. And it becomes this very natural inclination. So understanding your intuitive language is the first most important step. Well, I guess first acknowledging that you are intuitive, learning your intuitive language, and then being willing to play, to practice, to experiment. And I'm telling you, when you sit down to do your first angel writing session, you're going to feel like a real silly goose. You're going to feel like, what am I doing? Am I making this all up? Like, this is stupid. And that is your ego, which kind of takes us into the other part of your question, which was, how do you differentiate between those voices? And it's actually so incredibly simple. And we really want to believe that it's hard, because there is a part of us, our ego, that is trying to prevent us from accessing that information and that knowledge. And there's a lot of layers to that, and there's a lot of reasons to it. It's the unhealed self protecting itself from having to examine things that feel hard and scary. It's a fear of what happens if I actually am the person that I think I am. If I live the life that I dream of, what will I have to trade? What will I have to release? There's a lot of reasons that we actually resist our highest good. And I think people really can't imagine that. They just think, well, if it's good for me, I want it. Sure, you want it, but can you receive it? Can you claim it? Can you take ownership of it? Are there limiting beliefs or pain points or traumas that are still sort of occupying the spaces where that healed energy wants to live? And how can we make that unhealed self feel safe and comfortable to move through this process and do this work?